Well, so it's hard for me to do a podcast whenever it's been so hectic here around the house. We have a lot of stuff going on. Welcome back to HVAC Shop Talk, by the way. As you can see, I'm in my car right now. I'm recording the best way I know how. I have all my gear set up here. You can't see it, but it's a minivan with a tripod in front of it, and I got my camera bag, which I try to keep with me all the time, just because there's so many hobbies and interests that I have that revolve around those sort of electronics. I like to take photographs. I like to, record the podcast. You guys know that. I like to record video. I mean, it's always been something that's been interesting to me ever since it was those little VHS-C camcorders. And back in the late 90s and early 2000s, me and my friends would, we record when we were getting together. We'd horse around and record it. We would drink sometimes. I don't drink anymore, but we used to drink quite a bit. And we would record just horsing around doing the stupidest stuff. It would be so embarrassing. Like the next day, we would think we were the coolest people on earth, but then when you watch the tape back, you're like, ay, what were we thinking? Which is the case when we were not drinking as well. Same thing. We just kind of wondered, what were we thinking? Just with a lot of our decisions. So, I love this technology and stuff, which kind of leads me into a conversation here about where we're heading just in general. A lot of things are going to a computerized, more complicated, although very cool, because things that weren't available to average people now are available to almost anybody. Like back in the day, we used to like to play music, and we used to record onto a 4-track recorder that was a tape, basically a cassette tape. It recorded on both sides of the tape simultaneously, recorded 2 tracks on one side and 2 tracks on the opposite side. It was really, really cool at that time. And as time went by, it got more and more advanced, where now we're doing it on our computers. We just hit a button to record. We can record multiple tracks. Because back in the day, I'd try to record all the tracks myself on some of the songs. You'd play guitar riff, you'd play the drums, or you'd have the drum machine, then you play along with it, then you sing along with it, and you put a bass line to it, or whatever order you went in. And now it's so easy to do that for everybody. I mean, content creation, which is a word that's just recently come out, it's something anybody can do. Everybody can do it. There's content creators everywhere, which is a good thing and a bad thing. You have a bunch of people that never could have done it that now have the opportunity to, that are geniuses or beautiful artists. And then there's a whole bunch of people making just crap. And that's where I fall in. I fall into the just crap category. But, I can do it now because of technology, and this is America. God bless America, by the way. God bless America. But this isn't HVAC. We need to move on to something more HVAC. But I thought I would talk about something about my zone system, because I was installing my zone system, and I made a video, and by the time you hear this or see this, the video would have played out. In fact, where I'm sitting, it's Wednesday, and the video is going to be coming out tonight. It's 50 minutes long. It's an in-depth look at my zone system install, complete with whatever, good things and bad things that I put in there. I'm sure there will be people to highlight on both sides, which is fine. But I did catch something myself. I installed the zone system. I started it up, called for cooling. It was working great. Everything was working properly. But then I watched the video back, and there was a part of it that I saw where I made an error. And my error is quiet right now because it's not going to manifest until the winter time. So I went through and I was talking about setting the dip switches on the zone board. And on the zone board, there is a dip switch that switches from O to B. For all of us below the Mason-Dixon line, we are aware that when you switch from O to B, you're just telling the zone board in which cycle is your reversing valve energized. Well, the reversing valve redirects refrigerant flow in a heat pump, so you either get liquid going into your evaporator for cooling that's going to hit that metering device and expand, or in the opposite cycle, you're sending hot gas into that evaporator. We'll call it figuratively. It's actually the condenser in the wintertime, but the indoor coil, you're sending hot gas for the heating purposes. So when the reversing valve is energized in the heating cycle, it says it's energized in B. B is the designation for that. When the reversing valve is energized in cooling, it's called O. It's O or B. You select O or B. So I selected O, and I went about my business. So the zone board thinks it's O, but I actually wired it up properly. So there's a wire coming from B, but there's a call that's going to happen on O. So when cooling comes on, it energizes Y1 and eventually Y2, but it also energizes the O terminal. But because I set the dip switch wrong but wired it correctly, I'm not getting the signal right now because it's just energizing the O terminal, but there's no wire on the O terminal. In wintertime, it's just not going to energize the B. It's not going to energize anything because the reversing valve's energized in cooling with O. Therefore, I'll have air conditioning in the wintertime. So the challenge is for me to switch that and make that right before the wintertime. Now, I know you guys are like, well, just head up there now. Well, I'm not home right now. I'm not home right now. You know what? By the time I get home, I'll be thinking about something else. You know what? I try to keep a pretty steady regiment during the day because time is so scarce, especially right now. And I'll tell you, you guys deal with the same thing. You're out there dealing with the same thing. In fact, we could talk about this. Like time management, I've gotten better at it, but I still suck at it. So I've gotten, like, it goes from -10 to 10. And -10 is where I started, where you not only manage time poorly, you waste time. You actually make more, what's the proper wording here? You actually create more issues than you solve. When you get to 0, you're like treading water. You're not creating trouble, but you're also not getting much done. And then when you get to 10, you're not creating any trouble. You're being very efficient. You're moving in a straight line and accomplishing all your tasks. I've never met a 10 before. I think 10's a theoretical unicorn that prances around in a forest somewhere, and we never meet him. It's never going to happen. So the first thing I did over the last few years is I've added a medicine to treat my mental illness, which is the direct cause of the problem altogether. Now, I'm going to leave that right there, and you guys can decide whether or not I'm being truthful or not. Because, hey, I could be being truthful or maybe not. It's just kind of a fun game here, and maybe later in the show I'll let you know. Or maybe I won't because I'll forget because I didn't take my medicine. Who knows? And that can be important. I joke about that, but at a later date, we're going to have a serious conversation about that sort of thing and how it affects the industry and just your humanity in general and your family life and everything else. But I've added apps to assist with my time management. I found that's very helpful. David Richardson, a frequent guest of this show, introduced me to the Things app. And the Things app is actually really, really good. And I'll put a little overlay on the screen if you're watching this on YouTube. The Things app allows you just to make lists. It's very simple. It allows you to make lists, create projects. And what you can do is you can set up a project and you can set up all the details of the project and you can work your way through it. You can accomplish particular tasks. It'll mark them off. It'll give you a percentage that is done. You can also have recurring things that occur on your calendar. And a lot of calendars do this as well. Like each week, I'll check the YouTube comments on a certain day. Actually, I think that's today. It's Wednesday. You do certain things every week. I'll do like a Men with Issues podcast with Justin. Make sure to get a Shop Talk podcast done. Record this video. Or I'll turn that into a project and say, okay, one of the things I'm doing next is recording this holistic appraisal of an HVAC system using the YJack probes. It's going to be another big video, so I'll need to break it apart. So I create a project. I say I want X, Y, and Z done. I want to show each of the YJack probes because YellowJacket was kind enough to send those out here, so I want to give them a shout out by showing each one of the probes and what they do. Hook up the probes in the system, analyze and calculate airflow using static pressure, measure refrigerant temperatures and pressures, use all those things to calculate capacity, use the new YellowJacket app in order to make those calculations because now you can input airflow into the app. It's upgraded a little bit, so we're going to do that. I do like that. I think that was one of the things that was missing before. Well, okay, there's two things that were missing before. The first thing was YellowJacket making updated refrigerant wireless probes. Before they had the man tooth, but the man tooth from a different generation. It doesn't really work with YJack. So them coming out with the YJack pressure probes, that was cool. That's very cool. They have a pass-through for charging. That's also cool. So that's nice. That's very, very nice. So I'm very glad that that has happened. They've updated the app. So now the app can calculate some of these measurements, some of the capacity measurements, which I think is great as well. So you have this whole system now. And it works with the P51s too. If you want to use the P51s instead of the pressure probes, that's fine. You could do that. So I want to show all that stuff. I show where the placement is for the probes, for the psychrometer probes. They have a longer distance now. They use longer Bluetooth. So I want to kind of showcase that. They do have a repeater that comes with some of the sets, or you can buy it separately, I think. So if you do have a big house or a commercial property, theoretically, you can use repeaters to make that work. And I'm yet to try the repeater. I haven't needed a repeater. I've used them in a limited scale, and I just recently got the whole set, so I haven't really used the whole thing together. So I'll have to test that out. And maybe I'll do that while I'm doing my house stuff. Also, the Bosch is a dirty bird right now. My Bosch heat pump is covered in junk, and I have to clean it, but I might do a before and after cleaning too. You guys can help me out with this stuff, because I do a lot of experiments at my house, testing out some of the theory and the tools that come out. So we'll see how big of a difference there is, because it's dirty, guys. If I think of it, I'll put a picture like on Instagram after this podcast comes out, and it's just covered in, I don't know how it loaded with so much crap so fast. The last unit did not. I guess the Bosch is special. Plus, I'm one of them guys who just walks by the Bosch cutting grass while it's running. Like the people we always, you complain about. I am that guy. I'm like, boom, 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 and the grass is flying into the unit. Like, it'll be fine. It's all right. What's that, like just a couple PSI higher head pressure? Hey, that's fine. That's cool. It's just like a 10-seer now. I will say that since the Bosch has been running with the zone system, I'm a big fan of that. That's awesome. I love the 3 zones: the master bedroom, center of the house, living, and then the other bedrooms having their own controls, because my mother-in-law likes it like the temperature of the sun all the time, and I like more like Antarctica. And so I can turn the bedroom up during the day and then turn it down when I go to sleep. And then I can turn the living room down and then turn it back up when I go to bed. So it's really nice. I like it a whole lot. I like being able to program it in first stage, because as you guys have seen, or hopefully have seen, you can run the thing in first stage for pretty much as long as you want without going into second stage. And there's a 50% rule on the zone board where it won't go into second stage if less than 50% of the zones are calling, which for my 3-zone system means 1 zone's calling, which I love. I think that's great. I don't think a machine should go into second stage when you have that minimal call. It should be running in first stage indefinitely. So I have it set up for 21 minutes before it'll stage up anyway. And it goes all the way up to like, I don't know, 40 or 50 minutes on the zone board. It's pretty cool that you can actually drag it out that long. You get into a danger zone of capacity where you want to make sure you have enough capacity to do the cooling. You don't want to stage it so far apart where on a hot day it takes so long to get that second stage. The house is actually warming faster than you're cooling it, which is possible, especially around here in North Carolina with our latent load, sensible load. It's a lot of load for a unit to deal with. I was thinking about work, life in general, and all the things that we work on, all the things that we do, and what they mean. So, I'm called back to a passage in the Bible that I think explains this very well. A lot of the stuff that we work on, and I like to read it for you guys, and I think it'll help us out here. It helps me out. This is from Ecclesiastes, 1st chapter. It says, the words of the preacher, the son of David, king in Jerusalem, which is Solomon, as we understand it. Vanity of vanities, says the preacher, vanity of vanities. All is vanity. What does man gain by all the toil at which he toils under the sun? A generation goes and a generation comes, but the earth remains forever. The sun rises and the sun goes down, and hastens to the place where it rises. The wind blows to the south and goes around to the north. Around and around goes the wind, and on its circuits the wind returns. All streams run to the sea, but the sea is not full. To the place where the streams flow, there they flow again. All things are full of weariness. A man cannot utter it. The eye is not satisfied with seeing, nor the ear filled with hearing. What has been is what will be, and what has been done is what will be done. There is nothing new under the sun. Is there a thing of which it is said, see, this is new? It has been already in the ages before us. There is no remembrance of former things, nor will there be any remembrance of later things yet to be among those who come after. Well, that seems kind of depressing, really, but it's not depressing to me, because I think Solomon was trying to figure out what life was all about. And I think in our trade, it's the same way. You want to do the best you can do. You want to try your hardest. But in the end, a lot of the stuff we do isn't as much about what we've done, it's about how we've done it. And here's what I mean by that. So you can put in all the ductwork in the world, you can design a great system, but 10, 15, 20 years later, that's going to be undone and redone again. And all the good things that you do, there's no guarantee that they're going to remain good. And you go and install the perfect duct system. Well, if someone comes along and commissions it poorly, it's all for naught. It didn't work out. And you'd love to think that all these things are done perfectly every time and everything works in harmony, but it seldom does. There's always weak links in the chain. There's no perfect system put in because there can't be, because there's not perfect people putting it in. And even though your part may be perfect in perception, at least for yourself, looking in on it, it's never going to be that way. So what is the point of trying so hard if in the end it's not going to be as good as you would like it or as good as you did your part? Well, to me, when I read stuff like this written by Solomon, Solomon's trying to figure out, man, what is the point of all this stuff if there's nothing new and everything you do is for nothing because you work and work and work? And he says later in the book, you'll work and work and you'll save all this money and you'll give it to your children and they'll squander it. It doesn't mean anything. You'll build a house, but eventually that house is going to be condemned and ripped down. Or the earth is going to take the house back eventually, even down to the very lives itself, returning dust to dust, back to the earth. I think the point is to work as hard as you can. I think the point is to work in a way that you can be proud of with integrity, because you work, like we talked about last week, as if you're working for the Lord. You don't act like you're working for some homeowner or your boss who you don't like, or work with the folks that you don't get along with, or maybe you do. I hope you do. But you work for the Lord because that means you have the perfect boss. You have the perfect example to go by, and you'll never be let down. You'll never be betrayed. A lot of times there's office politics at work. It doesn't necessarily have to be an office for there to be politics, but there's difficulties that arise. There's issues that you have, and there'll still be issues no matter what you do. Even if you're working for the Lord, you're still going to have issues with other people because people are imperfect. People have opinions. And not everybody's working for the Lord, and not everybody even believes in the Lord. And I know some of you don't believe in that sort of thing or follow that. But I think we can take what we learned here and apply it, even if we do it in a secular way, which, that's just, like I said, that's just a hook to get you in to hopefully turn you on to this stuff. But you can see here from Solomon, Solomon was the wisest teacher in Israel's history. He asked the Lord for wisdom, and the Lord granted him wisdom. But Solomon wasn't perfect either. He married like 700 women, and folks were warned, say, if you do that sort of thing, if you don't do what the Lord says, then this is what's going to happen. You're going to have troubles. And he definitely had troubles because he turned away from the Lord because some of those women didn't worship the Lord. And if you guys have wives, as I know a lot of you do, sometimes a wife's influence can creep in. And not to say that your wives won't have good influences, but there are some bad that will creep in. Now, Solomon's wives, there's some bad that crept in and ended up, Israel was split in half, and all of a sudden there was Israel and Judah, and there was a whole bunch of kings, and half of them were awful, and the other half was somewhat awful, and then there was a couple that were pretty good. What's funny is we go on to like the later parts of this first chapter of Ecclesiastes, and it says right here, and I'll read what goes into it a little bit too. It says, what is crooked cannot be made straight. What is lacking cannot be counted. I said in my heart, I have acquired great wisdom, surpassing all who were over Jerusalem before me. And my heart has had great experience of wisdom and knowledge. And I applied my heart to know wisdom and to know madness and folly. I perceive that this also is but striving after wind. For in much wisdom is much vexation, and he who increases knowledge increases sorrow. To me, that's one of the lines of this book that stands out more than anything else. For he who increases knowledge increases sorrow. And I think when we think about us, you think about you guys out there who have studied for years and years, and you have just honed your skills, and you come in, and let's say you're an installer, and like we were talking about, you put in the best duct system in the world. You've got a great static pressure. Your airflow is going to be right on. All it's going to take is a guy to come in after you and do a good job of setting that thing up, and then they totally slaughter it. And all of your knowledge and all of your wisdom didn't help you very much right there. because all you do is you have a knowledge of the system you set up is now going to perform poorly, and you know how good it can do. And knowing how good it can do is the worst part, because if you're ignorant, then you hear the old saying, ignorance is bliss. Well, if you have the knowledge to do the right way and you see it not done, then that's going to cause you pain. That's going to cause you frustration. If you get up to be a company owner, I was a company owner for a while. I didn't have employees, but if you do have employees, you're going to probably have to learn to tolerate some incompetency. And I don't mean on a wide scale. I mean, they're not going to know everything, and you're going to have to be able to govern them without killing them, basically, because you're going to go out to job sites, you're going to see a whole bunch of stuff wrong. And because you have the knowledge of how it should be done, it's all the more painful to preside over when it's not done properly. Now, it's all great if you have I'm not going to, I hate to say it like this. Maybe I don't hate to say it. Maybe, and I don't really fear perception. Well, I don't know. Let's just say it. If you have a sales boss, and that's a sales boss who's got his good, better, best forms and his great attitude and his shirt with no creases in it, he goes out to a job, he sees god-awful stuff, and perhaps he doesn't even notice. Not to say that all salesmen aren't good technically, but typically you have an inclination for one or the other. I know there's some all-stars out there that do both, but I've never met one of them. Me, myself, I'm bad at sales. I'm very bad at sales. I'm not good at tech stuff either. I'm just one of those guys who aren't good overall. I mean, I've got like an average. I just got an average aroma coming off of me. That's what it is. I emanate mediocrity. But that's good for me though. At least I won't have this whole knowledge problem I've been talking about. Thinking about salesmen and stuff. This makes me think of this line here. This is Ecclesiastes 5. I'm going over to verse 10. He who loves money will not be satisfied with money, nor he who loves wealth and his income. This also is vanity. When goods increase, they increase who eat them. And what advantage has their owner but to see them with his own eyes? Sweet is the sleep of a laborer, whether he eats little or much, but the full stomach of the rich will not let him sleep. It's just really interesting here. And I don't mean to beat up on sales guys. I really don't. Because I think it's a necessary part of the trade. I mean, if you don't sell something, you have no jobs. So obviously you need salespeople. I've been exposed to enough bad and unethical salesmen that it's really tainted my perception of the entire section of the profession. And I believe that it's all in the training of a salesperson. Because when I read stuff like Ecclesiastes, I know that none of the tangible things that we are around are everlasting or eternal. Therefore, their importance is less than those things that are eternal, which is your souls, so to speak, spirit, whatever you want to call it. These things are eternal, and love for other human beings, that's eternal. So why not cultivate a skill which revolves around that and not the stuff that is tangible, like money? If you do a good job and tell people what they need and you convey that to them, I think they will purchase something from you. I mean, I think there's appropriate products for every job, and there might be a range, like your good, better, best forms, I guess. There might be a range, but there's also a boundary where people go outside of that boundary to sell something that either makes more profit, or maybe it's not appropriate, but it costs less and you're making decisions for them. I know a lot of people say that. So, I mean, that's true as well. Just because you're not gouging somebody doesn't mean you're doing a good job either. So I think there's appropriate products for every job. I think the more experience you have, and the more experience you have, the better you're going to be at selling anyway, because you're going to be able to not tick off your install crew by selling things that don't fit in the attic access, or the ductwork is way too large for, or too small for. Hey, let's be serious. Too small for. When's it too large for anything? Ductwork that's too large. Never heard of it, never heard of that. So basically, you want your sales guys to be good, at least somewhat technically, or in the install field, and you want them to read Ecclesiastes so they don't get the wrong idea about trying to gouge people. Is that what Ecclesiastes is about? I don't know about that. That doesn't seem right. Gentlemen and ladies, I know that I've come to you here recently and you see more and more of the Bible coming out in this, and some of you are happy and some of you are dismayed by it and put off by it. But I ask those of you who might have a feeling to humor me, because what I'm doing is no different than the advice I've given you from Ecclesiastes. I want you to have those tangible things that are necessary in life to take care of your family, but I also want you to incorporate the intangible, everlasting things, because in the end, those are the most important things you can possibly pursue. What good is having money and taking care of your family if you don't take care of your family spiritually? God wants the fathers, I'm speaking to fathers, to take care of their families spiritually and teach them about Jesus, teach them about the Lord, so you have an eternity together. That's more important, guys. It's more important. And for those of you who may not believe in what I'm talking about, I urge you to pursue as much information as you can to make the decision for yourself. Because I'm sitting here, I'm betting on this stuff, guys, because if I bet and I lose, but if you bet and you lose and you don't believe in this stuff, there's a much bigger downside than it is for me. So why not investigate it? Why not take a look at it? There's some great stuff in here. You're going to learn a lot of stuff. You're going to learn how to live your life. I tell you like I tell my children, I can't make you do it. Well, I can make my children do anything, but if you make somebody do something, they're not going to be too happy doing it. But I think if I can show you guys some things each week that you will see, and you'll be like, hey, that's pretty interesting stuff. Or, man, I'd like to read a little bit more about that. Then I hope that I've done that, because I think that's the most important thing I could possibly do. And make you better tech, make you better installer, make you better company owner, better than I ever was. I was, like I said, and I'm not kidding around, I wasn't a spectacular tech. I realize that. But I was okay. I wasn't the greatest installer in the world. But I was okay. And I wasn't the best company owner in the world, and I would just leave that at that, because that's probably my worst skill. So it wasn't even okay. It was like, you got by. I provided for my family. The Lord saw to that. So I thank him. He put me in a position as a podcaster. And I mean, that's just incredible, because think about that. I do HVAC podcast and they pay me for it. Thank God for that. Thank God that you guys listen to it. I appreciate it. I thank him every single day for everything he's given me, because I don't deserve it. I know I don't deserve it, but he gives it to you anyway. I just say that his son died and was resurrected, and I'm sticking with that. I'm sticking with that fact, and he sticks with me because of that. I say thank you, because, like I said, if God knows everything I've done and he's still willing to do that, yeah, praise God. That's all I have to say, guys. I hope you enjoyed the show. I hope you got something out of it, and I will see you guys on the next one.